Judges chapter 14. Judges 13, we have Samson. And normally, Samson is not a good example that is used. Most people, if they have an understanding of the Bible, they will associate Samson and Delilah, and of course his long hair, and how he gave over his secret to his great power. And so he's associated with failure. He's associated with really wrong choices. But there's a lot that we can learn from people. Sometimes you'll learn more from failure than you do success. Okay? I don't know about you, but a lot of times I learn a lot more about myself and about God and about life through the ways I have failed at different endeavors than I have when I've succeeded at different endeavors. And I certainly learn more about trusting God when I have failed. And usually it's because I haven't trusted God. But Judges chapter 13 talks about how Israel was in trouble and how they had strayed away from God. And I do believe God punishes just like a good parent would punish their own child. If they're out in the yard and you tell the child, don't go across the street, don't chase the ball into the street, and the child chases the ball into the street, I believe it's right and good for a parent to discipline the child in whatever form they feel appropriate. Now you say, well, there's no cars coming, and what's the big deal? And they had no intention, and they really didn't know. Yeah, but you're teaching them to understand that there's vehicles in life, and there's boundaries in life, and there's authority in life, and it's our job to help them. And sometimes it's by encouraging them and explaining the benefits of obedience, and sometimes it's discouraging them by explaining the lack of benefits that come with disobedience, the punishment that comes, the pain that comes with failure. And then you learn eventually to spend your money wisely, because if you just go out and blow it, then you're going to be painful. You don't have any lights at home. You're not paying your bills. You're not paying your mortgage. You get kicked out of your house, and you experience that pain. And so sure, come on. So I have the confession to make. I'm standing up here, and I don't have a Bible. That is terrible. And that's on live stream. Now, in fairness to me, I actually keep a Bible up here for that reason, and then they took it. We had the cantata on Sunday night, and I reached over to grab it, and it is gone. So anyway, I have it. So we have a Bible. We usually preach from the Bible here. All right. God does punish his children. However, I do believe there's a fair amount of bad things that happen simply because we're not under shelter, we're out in the rain. Let me give you an example. So if you as parents say, I want you to stay inside. It's rainy outside, you're going to get wet, you're going to catch a cold, don't go outside. Well, as a free moral agent, me, I can choose to go outside and stand in the rain. I can. But that's going to bring its own problems. And a lot of times, the difficulty that we face is simply because we're choosing to live outside the house. We're choosing to live outside of God's protection, outside of God's love and comfort. And when we do that, then we expose ourselves to all the difficulties of life. Whether it's the devil or my own flesh or the world or all the difficulties, it's because I have chosen to live outside. And so, yes, I do believe God can actively teach us and train us and discipline us, but a lot of times it's simply because we have decided to live beyond his care and beyond his protection, because he just will not follow us out in the rain. He's not going to condone what we do. So whether this is God punishing Israel by bringing the Philistines in to conquer them, or it is them living outside of his protection, in any case, they're still being oppressed by the Philistines. And God sends, he knows that they're in trouble, and so he sends a deliverer, except it's in the form of a baby born to an elderly family that does not have any children. So he picks some very unlikely vessels. He picks some unlikely people. And if you think, I could never be used of God, I'm a very unlikely vessel. Well, actually, if you're an unlikely vessel, you fit the bill, because that's exactly what God uses in the Bible, is people who the world says, well, you don't have a lot of talent, you don't have a lot to offer, What can God do with you? Boy, when he gets all of you, he can do something with you. So that is Samson's position. Now, Samson is promised when he is actually not even born and not even conceived, okay? But he is born, and he is given this caveat that other prophets were not given, which is, I want him to be a Nazarite, not a Nazarene. A Nazarene would have been from Nazareth, but a Nazarite is someone who took a vow, special from other Israelites, to not have any contact with a dead body, to not have any contact with anything associated with grapes, and then also to never cut their hair. So it was an outward sign. It was also something that required a lot of discipline. It caused emotional strain because you could not tend to your loved one at a funeral, which was very common at that time. And so that is what his vow is. From the time he is a baby, his mom takes that vow for him, and then he grows up as a Nazarite. Now, a lot of time has passed from the time he's promised to the time he actually is able to deliver the people. He's at least 20 years old by the time he is able to publicly reach the people. So the people have to wait for the deliverance. Even though it's on the way, it's actually there walking around. He's learning to tie his shoes. He's cleaning his room. He's fighting with his brother, whatever. He's growing up. The people have to wait for God's deliverance, even though it's already there. And let me tell you, the easiest thing in the world is to wait on God. No, it's pretty hard. God hears our prayer. God knows we're in trouble. He has provided deliverance, but we have to wait. We have to wait. Psalm 37:9, those that wait upon the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. Psalm 27:14, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thy heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Isaiah 40:31, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. And then Proverbs 20:25, but wait on the Lord, and he shall save thee. We need to wait on God. So now he is older. Now he begins to deliver Israel. We're not exactly sure how or what he's doing, but the Bible simply says he is starting to do exploits. He's starting to deliver them. So he's fighting somehow with the Philistines. He's maybe working politically. He's organizing something, and so he is being used of God to push back on the Philistines' oppression. But Samson, for all the character that we hope he'd learned, he's making some bad choices. He doesn't stay in Israel to find a wife. He goes to the Philistines, goes among their cities. He sees a girl in the Philistine area, in the Philistine cities, and says, I want to marry her. Now, it is so crazy for him to do this because these are sworn enemies. The Philistines are oppressing Israel. The Philistines are the enemy. The Philistines are the ones he's supposed to push out of their country, and yet he's going to them for his wife, which is crazy. And his parents know that he's not supposed to do that. And so when he comes back to them, he says, in their culture, go get her for my wife. Now, what he's really saying is, there's going to be an arranged marriage. This is in the Middle East. This is thousands of years ago. The families would have gotten together. There would have been some type of bride price, and we were familiar with that when I spent some time in Africa. And there would be negotiations, and really you're marrying into a family. There's a joining of the clans. And so it's quite a big deal. Even though they're probably both adults, there's still quite a cultural significance here. And so he says, I want you to go get her for me to wife. And they say, no, we're not going to do that. You should not do that. Even telling your adult children, you shouldn't make that choice. That's a bad choice. Don't do that. Again, we live in a society that says, don't tell anybody they're wrong. Don't tell anybody that they're wrong. Well, somebody's got to be the adult in the room. Somebody's got to say, that's bad behavior. You can't smash windows. You can't break the law. You can't lie. You can't cheat. That's going to break all of society down. And so they address that with him. And he simply says, now we'll pick it up in verse 3. Then his father and his mother, you gave me the smallest print on a Bible. I'm telling you what. So the Bible I usually have up here is giant print. I mean, it's like 18-point font, boom, like that. I'm telling you, this is like 0.3 or something. Good name. Okay. No, if I stand back here, I'm okay. So verse number 3, then his father, you did that on purpose, Phil, didn't you? Then his father and his mother said unto him, is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, among all my people, that thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said unto his father, get her for me, for she pleaseth me well. He didn't care about what they said. He's going to do his own thing. Now verse number 4, but his father and his mother knew not that it was of the Lord, and he sought an occasion against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. God was going to use this situation to bring about a glorification of himself. He was going to use this situation to help throw off the yoke of the Philistines. So God is allowing Samson to make wrong choices. Now, I want to be very careful and say, God did not force Samson to do this. God did not cause him to do it. God did not say, you will do wrong. You will go to the enemy for a wife. You will break your parents' hearts. That's not what is happening. But God is going to use it to cause Samson to be among them. And then we know the rest of the story. Eventually, lots and lots of Philistines are killed because of his interaction with them, Samson's interaction with them. And the point I brought out last week was this, that oftentimes we either cause our own grief by committing our own sins, our own problems. We make a mess of the situation, and so the pieces are broken, or someone else makes a mess of the situation, but we're still in the midst of a broken life or a broken circumstance. Either way, we've got broken vessels. Either we did it ourselves, like Samson, or we're like the parents who have a broken situation because of someone else's offense, someone else's problem. And now we're looking at a bunch of broken pieces. But this was the point last week, which is if you will trust God, God has the power, God has the grace, God has the patience, and God has the love, and most importantly, God has the wisdom to pick up every single piece and make it beautiful again. He can fix the problem, even the problem I make myself. Even when I look back and say, wow, I did not listen to instruction there, I didn't give heed there, I didn't give heed there, this is my mess. When you come to God and you say, God, I have messed up, He can make that situation wonderful again if we'll give Him all the pieces. And a lot of times we're in a situation that we did not make of ourselves. Someone within our orbit, someone close to us has made some bad choices, and unfortunately we're the recipient of that. We also we're in that same boat that they drilled a hole in the bottom and we're starting to sink. We're in that same orbit and we're caught up in that grief. And we can trust God that He'll take that and use it for His glory and your benefit. But Romans 8:28, and you know the verse, lots of you know the verse, a lot of times it is the life verse for people. It says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. That if He has all the pieces, He can make it turn to good. He can make it turn to your benefit. Now, you don't ever say, well, I'm glad I got cancer. I'm glad that circumstance happened. I'm really glad they messed up. No, that's not the perspective he's driving at here. I'm really glad they caused offense. That's not what he's driving at. What he's saying is that in spite of the fact that they caused offense, or in spite of the fact that I've caused my own offense, if we will give the situation over to Him, He can craft it into something beautiful. Now, none of that can happen unless you have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, that you actually are His child. And a lot of people say, well, God is in heaven as this benevolent master of the universe, and He's just giving grace to all His creatures. Now, I do believe He does love everyone, and I believe He does give grace to all His creatures because the sun rises and sets on everybody. But because of Adam's sin, the whole human race has been born outside of God's protection. And so God stands ready to have a relationship with us, and He stands ready to fix these problems, and He stands ready to cause all things to happen to good if He gets all the pieces. But He cannot do that unless we come to Him and become his child. And the way you do that is by becoming a Baptist. No. And the way you do that is by doing good works. No. By traversing the globe as a missionary. No. By being baptized. No. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God. If you believe in Jesus Christ, if you believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross and shed his blood to pay for your sin, then you are a child of God. Then he does offer this power and grace to pick up the pieces. And we went through a bunch of scenarios in the Bible of people who made a mess of their life and yet gave God those pieces. Or they were in a mess because of somebody else, and they gave God all the pieces, and he worked. Now I want you to see this thing in the few minutes we have left. This is what I have really been thinking about a lot this week. Go back to Judges 14. These two words jumped off the page at me after I got done, and I was wondering, like, I should have said that, but God wanted me to say it today. But after I got done, I thought about this for a couple of hours after Wednesday night service last week. These two words just kept coming back into my mind and my heart. Verse number 4, but his father and his mother, what's those next two words? Knew not. Knew not. It's one thing to maybe, I'll make a crazy scenario. There's two children and their dad is, let's say, a master sculptor and a master carpenter. He just can work with his hands really well. And he makes this vase, okay, and he's got it in the living room. And the two boys are playing, and they knock over the vase. And it's really one kid's fault, but the other kid is also there, and so they're both in a mess. and in that case, it's broken, and they feel bad, but they have this confidence that they know it was their dad's work to begin with, and they know their dad has the ability, and they might get in trouble, and dad might, discipline them some, but they have this confidence that dad can fix it. You ever feel like that in life, in your own real life, like your own dad, that I'll just call dad. Dad can fix it. My dad's pretty good about with home repair, and I get stuck, and I'm trying to, figure out how to tell him. Okay, I'm looking at this wire, and it's this and this, and then I FaceTime, and then that's a whole ordeal. No, the other button, Dad, the other button. Okay, good, okay. So you see that, and we have this idea, Dad can fix it. Boy, a kid gets in a car accident, and they're afraid to tell their dad, but they have this confidence, Dad will fix it. Here's the difference between that scenario and the two kids and what is happening here. What is happening here is they didn't know. I think that's the hardest part. The hardest part of this whole process is being in a situation where you don't know how God is going to put all the pieces back together again. You don't know where he is. You don't know what the end goal is. You don't know how he is working. We don't blame him. We don't point fingers at him. We don't say, well, you could have prevented this. Wait a minute. We're the ones who either got ourselves into it or there was other people involved. They made some bad decisions. But the hardest thing in that scenario is not knowing what the completed puzzle looks like. It's okay to look at a bunch of puzzle pieces on the ground and be putting together, and then you just got the frame and you're working on it, all the red pieces over here, blue pieces over here, because you got the picture to look at. But when you don't have the picture and you don't know what's happening, the broken hearts of Samson's parents seeing their son do this, and he had no right to do it, and he was wrong for doing it, and yet God is in the background saying, I'm making a master plan. I'm putting all the pieces together. But it's that time period of ignorance. It's that time period of darkness. And I just started thinking about those questions. What is God going to do with this mess? How is God going to turn this to bring it to his glory? How is God going to turn it to help me. And I started thinking through the Bible, and it's not explicitly stated of these people, but I can't imagine, or I can imagine rather, Joseph feeling this way. He just tells his brothers that he's had this dream. He just tells his mom and dad that he's had this dream. He has God speaking to him, which was very, very unusual. Very few people had a direct contact with God in the Old Testament through a dream or an angelic visit. It was very, very special, and he went kind of from the height of spirituality, and then in just a relatively few moments, he's in the bottom of a pit. And then he's taken out again, and he's sold as a slave, and he's walking to Egypt, and then he's put into this house, and then eventually he ends up in prison. What are you doing? I did nothing to deserve this situation. What puzzle are you putting together here? Joseph didn't know. Think of David. David is in the fields watching the sheep. He's probably aware that Samuel has come to anoint somebody as king in that area in Bethlehem. He probably assumes it's going to be one of somebody else, a neighbor or somebody, and then, wow, he's coming to my house. Of course, it's going to be Abinadab. It's going to be another brother. And then eventually they call him from the fields, and he goes, and he's anointed king, and he does not act pompous or arrogant. He doesn't force himself on the kingdom. He doesn't do anything. In fact, when he's called to the kingdom, he serves Saul faithfully. He defeats Goliath. He plays a harp to give Saul solace. He does everything he can to serve him, and then in just a relatively short time, he's in a cave hiding from Saul, who he served, who's trying to kill him. And then when Saul is circumstantially given to him and he could kill him, he doesn't. And Saul's like, I cross my heart, hope to die. I promise I will not try to kill you again. He walks out of the cave, and about 3 days later, he's back at it trying to kill him again. And so David's living this life basically offended, abused, hurt by outside people. It doesn't specifically say that he struggled with this, but I can just imagine him saying, God, what are you doing with all these pieces? I don't understand. Think of Daniel, taken from his land, elevated in the kingdom, kept as an advisor to the king, his friends put into the fiery furnace and then saved back again. And then he's in the palace when there's a complete change of kingdoms. And somehow God protects him so that he's now still the same position, but in a whole different kingdom with the Persians. And he's elevated with the Persians to a high position, and then he's taken down to the lion's den after being faithful. He is abused, he is offended, he is hurt, and he's there in that lion's den. God, what are you doing with these pieces? And then the example of a Christmas story, Mary and Joseph, and beautiful relationship from all we can tell. Joseph being faithful to God and serving God and setting up probably his own carpenter shop and having a pure and holy relationship with this maiden and just following God and doing what's right. Fiance, they're engaged to marry, and then he finds out she's pregnant. And the one who is the closest to him, the only one we know of who is a best friend of Joseph, betrays him in his mind. Because he's in the passage, he says, I'm going to put her away privately. I'm going to divorce her. I'm going to call off the engagement. Obviously, she's been with a man. I've been betrayed. I've been wounded. I've lost my best friend. At that point, I can just imagine him saying, I don't know what you're doing with all these pieces. I don't know. But that really is the definition of faith. Letting God put the puzzle together without seeing the end result. Letting God have all those pieces. You see, we don't really have a lot of ability. I can't really change what's happening in Washington. I can't change what's happening in Madison. I really can't change what's happening there in Oshkosh, and I hardly can change what's happening at 526 East River Drive. I have a difficult time changing here. There's not a lot I can do, but the one thing I can do is I can resist God's will. I can say, don't put the pieces together that way, God. I can get mad at God. I can get frustrated at God. I can run away from God. Or I can say, God, I don't know what picture you're making. I don't know how you are going to put this thing back together. I don't know. Just like Samson's parents, I don't know. And 1,000 times I wish this wouldn't have happened. 1,000 times it's totally Samson's fault for causing all this grief to his parents. It is not God's fault. But they can say, I have faith that if I just stay right here and don't run away, if I just stay right here in the boat and allow you to work, all things will work together for good. You'll put it together so that you're glorified and that it is for my good. I will never say, I'm glad Samson went to the Philistines. I'll never say that. But I can say, I'm so glad God is here to pick up the pieces. I'm so glad God is here to make a beautiful picture out of all the broken pieces that Samson did. So that was the point I wanted to make tonight about how God can make something beautiful out of something that is broken.